The Ghost in the Home Video, Chapter 1. The Echo in the Frame. The dusty scent of forgotten memories clung to the air in Catherine's new, smaller home in the quiet suburbs of Denver, Colorado. At 68, a recent widow, she found herself sifting through a lifetime of accumulated treasures and trinkets, each one a tangible link to a past now tinged with a quiet ache of loneliness. Among the boxes, she found it, a worn cardboard container filled with VHS tapes, their labels faded, their contents a mystery. Her son, Michael, 42, pragmatic and helpful, had suggested digitizing them. "Preserve the memories, Mom," he'd said, "before they're gone for good." Catherine, a woman of unwavering rationality, agreed. She sent the tapes to a local media conversion service, eager to relive the simpler times of family vacations, birthday parties, and holiday gatherings. Days later, a digital drive arrived, holding years of her life in neat digital format. Organized files. One rainy afternoon, with a mug of chamomile tea warming her hands, Catherine settled down to watch. The early videos were a joyful blur of her children, Lisa and Michael, as toddlers, their laughter echoing through the room. Then came the familiar, slightly grainy footage of a family picnic in the Rocky Mountains, dated 1989. It was a sun-drenched day, filled with the aroma of pine and grilling hot dogs, her late husband smiling, her children chasing a frisbee, their faces alight with innocent joy. Suddenly, Catherine froze. The camera, in a casual sweep across the verdant landscape, lingered for a few seconds on a distant tree line. And there, almost imperceptible, a fleeting, ghost-like figure. A woman. Her heart leaped, a wild, frantic bird trapped in her chest. The way she stood, the slight tilt of her head, the unmistakable cascade of reddish-brown hair. It was Sarah. Sarah, her younger sister, vanished 35 years ago. The year was 1984. Sarah, then a free-spirited 20-year-old, had gone camping alone in those very mountains, just miles from where this picnic was filmed. She never returned. A massive search had yielded nothing but a discarded backpack and a single muddy hiking boot. Weeks of desperate searching turned into months, then years. The police, finally, had declared her presumed dead, a victim of the unforgiving wilderness. Catherine had carried that silent, gnawing grief, that agonizing uncertainty, for half her life. Now, here she was, in a grainy home video. The figure was gaunt, almost ethereal, but undeniably Sarah. She moved slowly, her head turning as if searching for something. Her lips moved, a silent, ghostly whisper that twisted Catherine's gut. For a few agonizing seconds, she was there. Then, as the camera panned further, she was gone, swallowed by the dense forest. Catherine rewound the video. Her hands trembling, she played it again and again. Each time, the fleeting image appeared, a silent, inexplicable apparition. It couldn't be. It was impossible. Sarah was dead, had been dead for 35 years. Was it a trick of the light? A hallucination brought on by grief and loneliness? But her mind, rational and analytical, refused to dismiss it. The resemblance was too strong, the feeling too visceral. A cold dread settled over her, chilling her to the bone. This wasn't a memory. This was a nightmare, or a forgotten truth. The ghost in the home video, and it was beckoning her back into a past she thought she had buried forever. Chapter 2. The Skepticism and the Expert Eye. Catherine's first instinct was to call her children. Lisa, 40, her daughter, was pragmatic, quick-witted, and fiercely protective. Michael, 42, her son, was more reserved, a gentle skeptic who often sought logical explanations for everything. Lisa said, her voice laced with concern as Catherine breathlessly recounted what she'd seen. "Are you sure? It's been so long. Maybe it was just someone who looked like her, or a shadow." "No, Lisa," Catherine insisted, her voice firm, unwavering. "It was Sarah." "I know it was. Her hair, the way she moved, it was her." Michael, ever the rationalist, gently suggested, "Mom, grief can play tricks, especially with old videos. The quality is so poor. It could be anyone, or anything." "I need you both to see it," Catherine urged, her voice pleading. "Come over. Just watch it with me, please." They arrived, their faces a mixture of love and gentle skepticism. Catherine played the video, pausing it at the crucial few seconds. Lisa leaned closer, squinting. Michael zoomed in on his tablet, trying to enhance the pixelated image. "It's uncanny, Mom," Lisa admitted, her voice softening. "The resemblance is definitely there, but it's so blurry, so brief." "It could still be an illusion," Michael added, though a flicker of doubt now clouded his eyes. "The resolution is too low to be certain." Catherine knew they needed irrefutable proof. "We need an expert," she declared. "Someone who can enhance this, someone who can tell us definitively if that's Sarah, and if she's doing anything else." They found Dr. Evelyn Morton, a renowned expert in digital forensics and media restoration, known for her work with historical archives and cold cases. Dr. Morton, a woman in her mid-50s with keen, intelligent eyes, listened patiently as Catherine explained her discovery, her tone calm but unwavering. "Mrs. Hayes, it's not uncommon for grief to manifest in perceived images," Dr. Morton said, her voice professional, kind. "However, I'm always open to scientific inquiry. If the image is there, we can work with it." Catherine handed over the digital file. Days later, Dr. Morton called. Her voice, usually so composed, held a note of genuine surprise. "Mrs. Hayes," she began, "I've analyzed the footage extensively. The image is indeed remarkable. I've used spectral deconvolution and advanced stabilization techniques. The figure is clearer, and it appears to be your sister, Sarah. The facial recognition data, though limited due to resolution, shows a very high probability. And there's something else." Catherine held her breath. "Her lips," Dr. Morton continued, "they are moving. She appears to be whispering. The ambient sound quality is very poor, but with a highly sensitive directional microphone and noise reduction, I might be able to isolate something. It won't be perfectly clear, but we might get some intelligible fragments." A wave of dizzying emotion washed over Catherine. It was Sarah. And she was alive in that moment, in that video, trying to communicate, trying to tell them something. Dr. Morton's next words confirmed her worst fears and most impossible hopes. The footage was taken at a picnic site just 20 miles as the crow flies from where your sister disappeared. It's a remote area, but accessible. The impossible was becoming horrifyingly real. Sarah alive, years after her presumed death, a silent, desperate figure in a home video. And she was trying to speak. The mystery had deepened, becoming far more chilling than a mere ghost. It was a cry for help from the past. Chapter 3: The Skeptic's Shock. Armed with Dr. Morton's enhanced video and the chilling revelation that Sarah was indeed the figure, Catherine and her children knew they couldn't pursue this alone. Their next step was to contact Detective Robert Simpson, now in his 60s, retired from the Denver Police Department. Simpson had been the lead investigator on Sarah's missing persons case all those years ago. He was a man of logic and procedure, known for his methodical approach, but also for his deep-seated skepticism towards anything remotely supernatural. Mrs. Hayes, Detective Simpson's voice was gruff over the phone. "I understand your distress, but after 35 years with no new evidence, a home video? I've seen grieving families grasp at straws. I truly sympathize, but this case is cold." Catherine, however, was no longer a grieving mother, desperate for answers. She was a woman driven by a terrifying new truth. "Detective, please, just look at the video. Dr. Morton, a renowned expert, confirms it's Sarah, and she's whispering. I believe she's trying to tell us something." After much persuasion from Lisa, who calmly and rationally presented Dr. Morton's credentials, Detective Simpson reluctantly agreed to a meeting. He arrived at Catherine's home, his face etched with skepticism, a clear disbelief in his eyes. Catherine played the enhanced video. As the figure of Sarah materialized on the screen, clear enough now to show the haunted look in her eyes, the gauntness of her face, a visible shock rippled across Detective Simpson's usually impassive features. He leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the screen. "My God," he whispered, a tremor in his voice. "It is her. It's Sarah." He swallowed, his initial skepticism replaced by a profound awe. "And she's thinner, older, but it's unequivocally her." He watched the brief, agonizing seconds again, focusing on Sarah's moving lips. She's trying to say something. What did Dr. Morton say about the sound? Catherine explained. She's working on it. It's incredibly difficult given the ambient noise and the distance. Detective Simpson rubbed his jaw, his eyes distant, lost in the past. This changes everything. My God. I closed that case. Presumed dead. We scoured those mountains. There was no trace, no indication she was alive. This is unfathomable. He stood up, pacing the living room. Okay. This is the most extraordinary piece of evidence I've ever seen in a cold case. We need to go back to the beginning. Every single detail. He pulled out a small notepad. First, when was this video taken exactly? October 1989. So 5 years after her disappearance. She was alive. And second, that whispering. We need that audio. If there's a message, that's where we'll find it. Days later, Dr. Morton called with a breakthrough that sent a chill down their spines. "Mrs. Hayes, I have some fragments of audio. It's incredibly faint, full of static, but with spectral analysis, I've managed to isolate some repeated phrases. It's a whisper. A desperate whisper." She played the distorted sound file. It was barely audible, but words, fragments of words, emerged through the crackle. They took me. I can't return. The phrase repeated, a chilling, almost despairing mantra. Catherine gasped, clutching Lisa's hand. They took her? Who? Who took her? And there's something else, Dr. Morton added, her voice grave. During my initial review of the case files, Detective Simpson mentioned a strange, anonymous phone call made to the police shortly after Sarah's disappearance in 1984. A woman's voice, claiming Sarah wasn't dead, but had gone into the mountains to live with nature. Back then, it was dismissed as a crank call. but I've taken the liberty of digitizing that old audio recording from the police archives. And I've done a spectral voice analysis. Catherine's breath hitched. And? The voice, Dr. Morton said, her voice slow, deliberate. The voice in the anonymous call from 1984, and the faint, distorted whisper from your video in 1989. They are a definitive match. It was Sarah. She made that call. She was alive then. She was trying to tell you. The realization was a punch to the gut. Sarah wasn't a ghost. She was a captive. Alive, somewhere, in those vast, unforgiving mountains, trying desperately to reach out, to tell them her story, to scream the truth through an anonymous phone call and a hidden whisper in a family video. The missing persons case had just been reopened, and it was now a matter of desperate search for a truth that had been buried for decades. Chapter 4. The Whispers and the Hermit. The chilling confirmation that the anonymous call was Sarah's voice and her desperate whisper on the video galvanized Detective Simpson. He pored over the old case files, now looking for what he had dismissed as irrelevant. "She wasn't just missing, Mrs. Hayes," Simpson said, his voice grim. "She was taken, and she was trying to tell us all along. We just weren't listening hard enough." He pointed to a faded map of the Rocky Mountains, crisscrossed with search grids from 35 years ago. There was always a whisper, a rumor about a place deep in these mountains, a reclusive community, off-grid, anti-modern. They called themselves the Sanctuary of Solitude. They believed in a complete break from the outside world. No technology, no contact. They were known for taking in new members who sought to escape society. But once you were in for good. No leaving, no contact, almost like a soft imprisonment. Catherine's heart pounded. "You think Sarah was taken by them?" "It fits," Simpson said, his jaw tight. The anonymous call, the living with nature angle, and the fact that she was alive and thin in the video. If she was a captive, isolated, that would explain her gauntness. And the desperate whisper. She wouldn't have been able to just walk up to your picnic. She was watching, hoping to be seen. He sifted through more dusty files. I remember a lead, a local ranger, old man, name was Elijah. He lived in a cabin near the edge of the known trails. He reported seeing strange activity around that area, but we dismissed it as ramblings of an old hermit. He spoke of new faces entering the mountains, but never leaving. We should find him. It took days to locate Elijah. He was now 65, still living in the same isolated cabin, older, more weathered, but his eyes still held a sharp intelligence. He was initially wary, distrustful of outsiders. "Police? After all these years?" Elijah grumbled, eyeing Detective Simpson suspiciously. "Not just police, Elijah," Simpson said, his voice calm. "This is Catherine, Sarah's sister. We need to know what you saw, what you knew about the Sanctuary of Solitude, about Sarah." Elijah's gaze softened as he looked at Catherine. He remembered Sarah. Bright young lass, full of life, loved these mountains. He sighed, a heavy, ancient sound. I saw her a few times after she vanished." Catherine leaned forward, breathless. Where did you see her?" Elijah led them to a worn map of the area, pointing to a secluded valley deep within the mountains, a place marked only by faint, unofficial trails. They were there, the Solitude folk, isolated. No one bothered them. They didn't bother anyone, except they had their ways of recruiting. Young folks looking for a new life, disillusioned with the world. "Sarah, she ended up there," Elijah said, his voice low. "I saw her once, early on. She was thin, looked lost, not like herself. She saw me. Her eyes pleaded, but then one of their guards came, took her away. She was never alone outside their compound. "Why didn't you tell us then?" Catherine asked, her voice tight with anguish. Elijah shook his head. "I did, tried, told the local sheriff, but they just called me a crazy old hermit. Said those folk were harmless, just wanted to be left alone. Said she chose to be there. But she didn't choose, ma'am. Not really. Once you were in, you were beholden to their rules. Their freedom was a cage." He paused, a profound sadness in his eyes. "I saw her once more, years later, with the little ones of their community. She looked resigned, like the light had gone out of her eyes. She was still beautiful, but not Sarah, not the Sarah I knew." "Do you know what happened to the community?" Michael asked. "Moved on," Elijah said, shrugging. "Or died out, most likely. Their leader, a man named Silas, he was old even then. Disease, harsh winters, they scattered. Their compound, it's been abandoned for years. Overgrown. A fresh wave of grief, mixed with a chilling determination, washed over Catherine. Sarah had been alive, a captive, forced to live a life she didn't choose, isolated from her family, her true life. The whispers from the video now echoed with a terrible clarity. "They took me. I can't return." This wasn't a search for a ghost. It was a mission to find the truth, to reclaim Sarah's story, and to bring her home, even if it was just her memory. Chapter 5. The Abandoned Sanctuary. Guided by Elijah's precise directions and Detective Simpson's knowledge of old, forgotten trails, Catherine, Lisa, and Michael embarked on a journey deep into the remote wilderness. The air grew crisp, laden with the scent of pine and damp earth. The towering pines seemed to close in around them, a silent testament to the vast, untamed beauty that had for so long hidden Sarah's secret. After hours of arduous hiking, they reached a secluded clearing. It was a haunting sight. The remains of a small, self-sufficient community lay in ruins. Rotting log cabins, collapsed fences, rusted tools half buried in the overgrown grass. Nature had begun to reclaim it, slowly erasing the evidence of human habitation. "This was it," Elijah whispered, his voice somber. "The Sanctuary of Solitude." A profound silence fell over them, broken only by the rustling leaves and the distant cry of a hawk. Catherine walked through the ruins, her heart heavy, her eyes scanning every detail, searching for a sign, a trace of Sarah. Lisa and Michael fanned out, searching the dilapidated structures. In one of the larger cabins, a communal living space, Lisa found it. Tucked beneath a loose floorboard, wrapped in oilcloth, was a small, leather-bound journal. Its cover was weathered, but legible. Sarah's journal. It read in familiar, elegant handwriting. Catherine snatched it, her fingers trembling as she opened it. The pages, though yellowed, were filled with Sarah's distinct script. It was a chronicle of her life within the community. Her initial confusion, her desperate attempts to escape, her yearning for her family. November 15th, 1984. They brought me here, said I was chosen, a new path, freedom from the corrupt world. But it's a cage, a gilded cage perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. I miss Catherine. I miss home. I must find a way out. July 10th, 1985. Another failed attempt. They caught me. Silas the elder says I have impure thoughts, that I must cleanse myself. I am weak. I am tired, but I must not give up. For Catherine, for my family. October 26th, 1989. Today, I saw them, my family, on the old picnic grounds. So close. I watched them from the tree line. So beautiful, so full of life. I wanted to run to them, to scream, but the guards were there, always there. I tried to whisper, to send them a message, just a whisper, a plea. Did they hear me? Did they see me? Oh, Catherine, my heart aches. I just want to tell you, I'm here, I'm alive, but I can't return. Catherine sobbed, clutching the journal to her chest. This entry. This was the day her family picnic video was filmed. Sarah had been there. So close. Her whisper, her desperate attempt to communicate, preserved on that old VHS tape. The journal continued, charting Sarah's slow, agonizing surrender. Her spirit, once so fierce, was gradually worn down by the isolation, the constant ideological indoctrination, the psychological pressure of the community. She wrote of giving up hope of escape, of finding a fragile peace within the confines of her new life, a life that felt like a living death. The entries became less about escape and more about resignation, about watching the seasons change, about the simple rhythms of nature, about the children in the community. She wrote with a quiet despair, a woman slowly fading away. The last entry, dated just 5 years ago, was faint, barely legible. March 2nd, 2020. The cough. It grows worse. I think this is the end. I have found a strange peace, Catherine. I lived. I loved. I was taken. But I found strength here too. Don't blame yourself. Don't ever blame yourself. Live, sister. Live for both of us. And know, I love you. Always. My heart, it returns home. To you and to our memories. Sarah had died here, in this desolate place. Not violently, but from an illness. Isolated, yearning for her family. She had never escaped her sanctuary of solitude. The grief that washed over Catherine was different from the initial shock. It was a profound, bittersweet sorrow, mixed with a deep understanding of her sister's courage, her resilience, her enduring love. Sarah had been alive. She had fought, and she had sent them a message, a desperate, loving whisper across time. The ghost in the home video was not a figment of her imagination, but a testament to a life tragically lived in secret. A life that finally had a name, a voice, and a story. Chapter 6. A Sister's Homecoming. The journey back from the abandoned sanctuary was somber, but infused with a quiet sense of closure. Catherine carried Sarah's journal, its worn pages a tangible link to a sister she now knew in a way she never had before. Sarah's ghost was gone, replaced by the profound, tragic reality of her life and death. Detective Simpson, his face grim, vowed to pursue the remaining members of the Sanctuary of Solitude, if any could be found, to ensure no one else suffered Sarah's fate. Elijah, the old ranger, watched them leave, a silent witness to a truth finally unearthed. Back in Denver, Catherine and her children, Lisa and Michael, made arrangements for a proper memorial service for Sarah. Not a funeral of uncertainty, but a celebration of a life now understood, a spirit finally at peace. They brought Sarah's journal, her old backpack, and the single muddy hiking boot to the service. Tangible reminders of her adventurous spirit and her tragic captivity. Catherine stood before the small gathering of family and friends, her voice clear and strong. She told them the story of Sarah's disappearance, the mystery of the video, and the heartbreaking truth uncovered in the mountains. She read excerpts from Sarah's journal, her words painting a vivid picture of a woman stolen from her life, yet clinging to hope and love until her last breath. The initial shock of the attendees gave way to profound sympathy and awe. Sarah, the missing girl, was no longer just a cold case. She was a brave woman who had lived a hidden life, a silent testament to the dangers that lurk in the shadows. Catherine found a new purpose in her life. The pain of Sarah's loss, once a raw wound, now became a driving force. She decided to dedicate her time and resources to raising awareness about hidden cults and isolated communities that prey on vulnerable individuals, offering false promises of freedom while stripping away their autonomy. She started a foundation in Sarah's name, working with law enforcement and mental health professionals to help families find missing loved ones and to offer support to those who had escaped such communities. The home video, once a source of terror and disbelief, became a symbol of hope. Catherine often watched the short clip, no longer seeing a ghost, but Sarah, her brave sister, trying to reach out. Her whisper, "They took me, I can't return," now served as a powerful reminder of vigilance, of the need to listen to the faint whispers of those in distress. Lisa and Michael, profoundly affected by their aunt's story, became active in the foundation. Their bond with Catherine deepened, united by this shared, tragic legacy. They learned the importance of looking beyond the obvious, of trusting intuition, and of never giving up on those you love. Catherine often visited the small, quiet memorial she had placed for Sarah in a local park, a simple stone bench overlooking the mountains. She would sit there, holding Sarah's journal, feeling her sister's presence in the rustle of the leaves, the warmth of the sun on her face. Sarah was finally home, not in the way they had hoped, but in the truth of her story, in the love that endured, and in the lives that would now be protected because of her. The ghost in the home video had brought home a truth, however painful, and in doing so, had finally brought Sarah to rest.